Yo guys, welcome to the video. This is Josh or Milky, and in today's video, we're going to talk about my latest Torchlight Infinite build. I wanted to build an Anger Rehan. He got some small buffs in Season 3. They increased the damage dealt by his burst. So I wanted to try and make a build that played to his strengths, and his strengths are that unique burst skill that he gets access to. It kind of functions as a cast on crit build. Now, I did make this build with the purpose of being able to farm T8 juiced maps without dying all the time. T8s are incredibly rippy this league, so I wanted to make somewhat of a tanky character that could deal with the mobs, so the damage isn't the highest. I think we topped out at about 800 mil, but we could farm those super juiced T8s with no problem at all. I will, at the end of the video, include a rundown of a budget setup that I would recommend if you wanted to use this in T7s. It's capable of farming T8s without much juice, but you will want to upgrade to the build that I show at the start of the video as quickly as possible to be able to really take advantage of what this build has to offer. Enjoy the video. Okay, let's come straight on into game and talk about how the build functions. First of all, we're going to be savage charging around. All you do is hold down right click and your guy runs. That's it. And as you do this, you will hit mobs and trigger burst, which is your hero trait. So we'll first talk about those. The hero trait is, first of all, rage. This allows you to trigger burst once on hit while berserk is active. So we need that berserk uptime. So we need to be gaining berserk rage as much as possible. The second trait is Righteous Fury. This can also be Frenzy Furious. It kind of depends what memories you're using, but Righteous Fury allows you to maintain Berserk more often if you're not using these Rage on hit relics, but we'll get to those later. So Righteous Fury is going to be the mainstay for most people, but you can use this depending on your memories and relics. Rampaging, you can't not have this. It gives you 2 support slots, which we're using to socket in Steamroll for an additional 53% damage, and crit damage for an additional 64% damage. So a lot of damage on our burst from those 2 supports. Tunnel Vision, again, this is what makes the build tick. We reduce the damage our actual skills do, but massively increase the damage that our burst does. 120% additional damage. And then finally, Reverberation for more burst procs. So that is the hero traits and how we've set them up. So now that we've spoken about the hero traits, let's look at the skills. What skills are we using? How is this all happening? Well, we're using Savage Charge linked with Steamroll, Hardened, Guard, Crit Rating, and Mark. Steamroll for the increased AoE. Hardened gives you a nice 25% damage reduction. Really big. As I said, we don't want to die on this build. Guard, same reason. We get Barrier, which shields you for a portion of your HP. Very nice. Crit Rating, we need to crit as often as possible. As I said, this is basically a cast on crit build, so we need to be critting. And Mark makes the enemies weaker to critical strikes, so we deal more critical strike damage. Mark is very good. Life Source, this should not be groundbreaking. This is just our life skill. Fixate, this is all the activation skills or empower skills. Fixate, Burst of Anger, and Bull's Rage. Bull's Rage you just want to use. Keep it up 100% of the time, and you will deal an additional 45% damage. Very nice. For the auras, very important. We have a Restrain at least level, I think it was 15 to get everything in. You need Precise Elemental Resistance, Weapon Amplification, Fearless, and then a Thunder Spirit. Thunder Spirit is important, and we'll see why next. This is why. Cast when channeling, I've actually got this so that it seals no mana. You might be thinking, how am I fitting all this in? I've got 4 auras and a cast when channeling setup on my life. We'll get to that later, but this is what makes the build so tanky. Cast when channeling mean on a 0.4 second cooldown, we trigger these skills in succession. Now, Frost Shield grants us 52% reduced physical and fire damage taken. Huge amount. Delayed Pain means that 51% of the damage we take is taken instead as damage over time, which makes it much easier to deal with. We're not getting one shot. And Protective Shield means that 35% of the damage we take is transferred to our minion or our Thunder Spirit right here. So we are incredibly hard to kill as long as our cooldowns are up. So we need a lot of cooldown in the build. Lastly, we have Cast on Crit to curse enemies with vulnerability to make them more vulnerable to our physical damage. And then Swiftness to move around a lot faster. And the Precise version actually grants you a nice amount of cooldown recovery speed. So this is very important. Even on the budget setup, you will need all this. You will need the Restrain. And you will need all the gems I have shown. This is how you get tanky. The only way you can do this without the Restrain is if you drop one of the auras, which if you absolutely have to, drop the Weapon Amp. But you are going to see a drop off in damage. Next, we'll go into the talents. The talents I have chosen are the God of War tree, Shadow Dancer, and Warlock tree. And the reason for that is God of War grants us access to additional physical damage. We don't want to deal elemental damage, so Brutality is great for us. 35% additional damage, fantastic. Then we have Fervor. We just have Fervor, brilliant. We also get 30% increased effect of that fervor, which means that we're getting more crit rating. And we also have 30% increased effect of that fervor, meaning we crit more often. Very nice to include. The trees I'll show briefly, but they will be in the description, so don't worry. If you miss anything, don't feel the need to stop and pause. Blunt means that we completely ignore armor, so our enemy's main way of mitigating our damage is completely ignored. Brilliant. And then hair trigger. This means that our burst gets 2% additional damage for every 3 points of fervor rating, which is about 66% additional damage for burst, which is obviously fantastic. Warlock then is a big source of our cooldown reduction. We have 15% of the bonuses and reductions to attack and cast speed apply to cooldown. So every 6 points of attack speed is 1 point of cooldown speed. And then off the beaten track, just so our supports are higher leveled, those massive additional damage multipliers from things like crit damage and steamroll and crit rating on our main skill, all of these are scaled by these +3 levels of supports, which makes for some very strong supports. And then the slates, this is where the magic happens. This is the money, this is where you're going to spend most of your money on this build. What I have done is I have got 4 slates that give additional physical damage for every point of order, and I have stacked them together along with a God's Footstep. So my order very slowly reduces, but while it's up, I gain at least 12% additional physical damage from each of these slates. Now these also scale each other, so this one is all the adjacent ones, it scales it by an additional 20%, which results in a lot more additional damage. So from this combined, it's probably double damage, which is very nice. Rushed gives us 35% additional damage, and move speed, which is crucial for the build. And then you need sealed mana on a deception slate, at least 5%. The more you get here, the less you have to rely on restrain, if that's something you can worry about. If you can't afford these, maybe get some more sealed mana, then the restrain's not going to be as much of an issue. And then very importantly, you need minus 40% sealed mana for triggered skills. This is how we get our cast when channeling and cast on crit setups to cost nothing. But you do need this mod in order to fit in the defensive setup that I demonstrated. 9% strength was just nice for me because we are strength stacking a little bit. You might not be able to get rid of the strength, but there are other good mods you can find. Now we'll talk about the gear. Now I have been running this with an Eternity. I'm not going to lie. I wanted to use an Eternity because I wanted T8 maps to be a breeze. However, T8 maps can easily be run with a Vortex Heart. I have done this multiple times to demonstrate it. Vortex Heart is more than enough. What you would want to do though is to buy one with the corrosion that makes this value lower. Higher, sorry. You don't want it to be minus 70%. It's too much. It's too much of an impact. You want to get it as close to the minus 20% on the corroded version as possible, because it is a real big problem. But it is 40% additional damage. It's a very nice amulet for the build. Then we use heavy wear, which reduces the damage we take and also increases the damage we deal. Fantastic chest for this build. The helmet is just life, regeneration, and resistance. The gloves give us explode, which is very nice for T8s. It means that if we kill a pack of enemies with a really tanky rare mob, well, they're going to explode and then kill the rare mob. So it makes life a lot easier. Boots is just life, move speed, resistance. Pretty standard pair of boots. The belt. This one is the big one. We gain 1 point of order every 6 seconds. So this makes our order higher way more frequently. We very rarely drop below 85 order over the course of a map. And we also reduce the speed at which it decays, which again, combined with this, we're just constantly having more and more order. Plus 20% cooldown recovery speed when having at least 73. This is pretty much all the time. And then 0.5% move speed for every point of order. Move speed is obviously very nice on this build. Ring is just damage, life, resistance. This is important. The chaotic ending so that we can get tenacity blessings and agility blessings. And then the big damage for the build is from the weapon. You want as much DPS on the weapon as possible. This is not including gear attack speed. That's because burst doesn't care about the gear attack speed. It scales based on your weapon damage. And this damage is represented here because I have no attack speed. So you want this fizz mod to get as much fizz as possible, gear fizz to get as much gear fizz as possible. And then I chose to strength stack on top of it because we can add more flat damage to the burst, which is really, really nice. And then get strength, and then attack crit so that we're critting more often and proccing burst more often. So that is the gear that we're actually wearing, but the remainder of the gear will be in the hero traits and relics. We have a memory effect relic that gives us 25%. We also have 5 rage on hit with a cooldown of 0.3 seconds. If you get enough of these, so I have some here, let me demonstrate them. Gain 7 rage. You can actually drop Righteous Fury and get Frenzy Furious so that because this will be enough to maintain your perma rage. But more often than not, I just preferred to go with this option right here, which is move speed and additional damage, because I didn't need the rage and I didn't feel like I needed this point. I just wanted to move faster. So that's why I ended up going with this. So that's all the gear, the talents, and the hero traits. This build performs incredibly well. Obviously, it is quite expensive if you were to include the Eternity. The Eternity makes it an absolute breeze to map with. It's not as overpowered as it was in the past, but I just wanted this to be super tanky so I could chill and farm some juice T8s on a pretty cool Rehan build. Rehan is he's underperforming a bit right now, at least on most of the things he does. He doesn't really do anything better than anyone else when it comes to attacks other than scaling the burst. So that's what I wanted to try and do, and I think I did it pretty successfully. As I say, the damage isn't out of this world. You're not going to be deleting the dummy if you're a dummy enjoyer, but I'm not a dummy enjoyer. I just care about a build that can do what I set it out to do, which in this case was to kill T8 maps, and it did that. So let's talk about the budget setup, and maybe you guys can get started with this in T7 or those low T8. Okay, so let's take a quick look at what I would change on the budget setup. What I would change, first of all, is obviously you're still going to be running a Vortex Heart, preferably corroded if you can get it that way. Everything else is the same except the belt. The belt, you're going to use the sight of the giant. This gives you an enlarged physique, which causes you to have a 40% increased skill area, as well as take 5% less physical damage. Pretty cheap belt, very nice, gives you 50 strength as well. But we aren't strength second yet. You can see from the weapon, we're using a hammer this time, which you'll see why that's important in a second. But as high gear physical damage, again, as you can, attack, cast, and movement speed while channeling is phenomenal. You can get this on all two-handed hammers, and it is a very nice mod. So what I do is I just start out with either this mod or the flat physical damage, reroll until you hit either gear fizz or the cast speed mod, and then just get the last one with your targeted processing. So it's not too bad to make. It might take you a few hammers to get up to 480, but 480 is a pretty decent amount, and that's going to scale your burst damage significantly. And then for the slates, we'll come in and we will remove all of these legendary slates so that we are not getting all these additional damage multipliers, and we'll just put on, let's see, we've got this guy right here, which gives us 48% damage for triggered skills, some melee resistance, some life. We can just throw that on there. And then we have this guy, which gives us, again, a bit of additional damage, reduced additional damage taken, some regain, some crit. Perfect. You could get even better than this, obviously, if you're not using the legendaries, but this is just what I have available. And we'll see how we look in a T8 map. So we'll blast a T8. We'll throw on 100% drop quantity. We're not going to put compasses in. As I say, this version of the build, this is going to be your farming T7s. Maybe you come into T8 every now and again, but I will show in a T8 just for the sake of showing what the build's capable of, even on more of a budget. And I think we're going to be absolutely fine. Now, what you will see from this map is that the single target on this setup is fairly low. We're already low with the expensive setup, so you're relying quite heavily on the explosions that you get from the gloves to take out these big rare mobs. You get so many mobs combined together that they just explode and kill one another, and it's really nice. Explode's very important for this build. Now, the bosses, you're going to see this guy incredibly tanky. It's going to take us a while to do it. You can get him. You can definitely kill him, but it's going to take you a little minute. There we go. He's gone down. And then we... So that guy's down. Now we'll go on over to the boss. Boss, again, this is going to take us a little while. The damage on this build is not crazy, especially on the budget setup for a T8. But hey, we can do it, and that's what counts, right? Because this build on this amount of gear is very, very cheap, to be fair. And we'll do the cube just for a good look at the end. Ooh, we got a greed straight away. Okay. Always greed. Always greed. Another greed. Okay, well, I mean, 5 FE, okay, for the video. We'll make 10 FE. Another greed. Okay, this is not scripted, I promise. What's this? Ooh. Okay, and I do like to keep 40 in the bank for the next map, so I'm going to do this, and... Okay, 10 FEs. Well, a nice way to end the video, but there you go. The budget setup, the builders will be in the description. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope if you do try this build out, you have a good time. If you have any questions about the build, feel free to come see me on stream and tell me how it's going. If there's anything I need to help you with, I'll be more than happy to. I'll see you soon.